You're listening to DecayMag Sessions. Dead Space video game 10-year anniversary special.
Isaac, it's me. I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about everything. I wish I could just talk to someone. It's all falling apart here. I can't believe what's happening.
How many times you watched that thing? Guess you really miss her. Don't worry, we're almost there. You'll be able to look her up once we're on board.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Ken R2's DecayMag founder, and you're listening to DecayMag Sessions. And this is a special episode in which we will be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of, to my opinion, the most influential survival horror video game franchise. Not only the video game, but a video game franchise, which is Dead Space. And also included in this podcast is an exclusive interview with actor Gunner Wright, notable for his voiceover and motion capture portrait of the protagonist Issac Clarke in the Dead Space video game franchise. With this discussion is Paul Dulski from Everything Horror Podcast. Thank you, Paul, for joining me on this conversation.
Hey, I love Dead Space so much, and then when you're like, hey, who wants to help? I could not refuse this offer.
Made you an offer you can't refuse. I heard that before. What's that? I remember that line. I forgot the movie, though. But anyways, yeah, Dead Space, before we jump into our slate of topics, Dead Space is an amazing game. Spawned 2 movies, multiple video games, even a mobile game, and graphic novels. The story is so in-depth, and it goes across the board. You could spawn so many stories off of this.
Oh my god, yeah. There's they could have done so much with it too, and I mean, I know we'll get into it too, but the way they started it though, I mean, that was the best way to start a game ever, to be honest.
Right. And this was at a point that survival horror video games it was at a point where it was going down in popularity. And I think the release of Dead Space jump-started the whole genre again. Of course, we had other titles available, but that was when the shift of survival horror was going down. Everyone was going towards the first-person shooters, action shooters, and video game franchises wasn't as popular as it was.
Exactly. I mean, I don't even think a lot of people really had too much faith in this series, if that makes sense. Like when it first came out, it was one of those things where it was just like, oh, okay, a survival horror game in space, okay. And then, then once it came in, it was just, it was almost like it was its own virus because it grew and grew. And then people were like, dude, have you played this game? This is so scary. Just everything about it. And, it kind of took off from there.
Right. And I opened up the interview with actor Gunner Wright with a story. And I'm going to repeat the story once again. I wanted to get my hands on this video game for a long time. That was back 10 years ago. So my wife and I would walk into GameStop, and discount video game section. You just watching it. My wife says, "This is a game you're always talking about." Yeah. Well, since you haven't gotten it and you always talk about it, I'm gonna buy it for you. That was it. I was hooked. Bought the first one, bought the second one, bought the graphic novels, everything else, book-wise, except for the action figures, which, Paul, you got your hands on those little figurines. Lucky you.
I got my hands on Isaac and a Necromorph, and all I gotta say is I'm kind of wow at finding them at such a may I say, cheap price compared to what they normally go for now, as I may say.
Right, yeah. Oh, man, I wish I had the action figures, but only got the books, which is even good in itself. I could always pick them up and reread them. Except for one, I got them framed. Well, any event, let's kick this discussion off. We have a slate of interesting topics, and let's begin.
Dead Space, its influence on survival horror.
Sinking our orbit now.
All this trouble over that chunk of rock.
Deep space mining is a lucrative business, Miss Daniels. Aegis 7 is a gold mine according to prospectors' reports. Cobalt, silicon, osmium. Now, where is she? There she is. We have visual contact.
So that's Ishimura. Impressive.
The USG Ishimura. Biggest planet cracker in her class.
Kicking off our topic is Dead Space and how influential it was to not only survival horror, but also as a successful video game franchise in horror. That's amazing. I started out the conversation saying that, in my opinion, this is one of the most fantastic video games ever for survival horror. The story could go in so many different directions, which it has on film, in book form, in graphic novel form. And the story is rich in, let's say, religious and fanaticism in religion. And we also have a protagonist with an interesting character arc. Not only does he develop in part 1 from the beginning of the game to the end, but throughout the whole series, Issac Clarke changed from a regular average Joe, which he's a mechanic, into a soldier practically in part 3. So, Pauls, what are your opinions on Dead Space and its influence on the video game survival horror genre?
It's a great big one, to be honest. I mean, we're talking about back in 2008 of a time where survival horror was kind of slacking. I mean, look at what happened with like Resident Evil 5. That became a shooter upper, and then more genres of the horror started to follow the footsteps of Resident Evil 5 for some stupid ass reason. But then when we get this nice, fresh survival horror game where it literally is a survival horror because of the type of antagonists or creatures that you really do and go up against, like, it just had that really fresh, inspired, new look of the survival horror genre. And, you know, nowadays, even right now, you don't really see too much of that anymore, rather than give you a gun with unlimited ammo and you just fire away at a big horde of zombies or anything, really.
Right. And which those games do have a large following, or we could also see that with the zombie DLC in Call of Duty, I think it is. But as you mentioned, Dead Space, it was its own entity, and the creation team behind this project, they really went all out to create grotesque looking characters, studying how the human body reacts to car crashes, mutilations, and all these gory images, videos, in order to convey these characters. Because in reality, if you break it down, the necromorphs are actually zombies in space, but really transmogrified, something beyond what we normally see as a zombie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we get to see like some of these necromorphs that have like blades for hands, or, you know, we get these little weird maggots that come out of that really great big fat one and stuff. And I mean, that right there, I mean, just to throw in real quick, when I first saw that, the fat guy with the belly, and then if you accidentally shoot him in the stomach and release all those like weird, like I said, magnet-looking things that pretty much jump at you and cling to you, and then you have to shake them off in the game. And sometimes if you have so many of them, they will overpower you and just bring you to your death.
But that's all part of survival horror. Making decisions such as that. Do you use your gun? Do you engage in hand-to-hand combat? Do you run away? That as small and of detail as it was, really shined in the first installment of Dead Space. And that eerie feeling, the ambience, the textures, being isolated because nobody's helping you. There's no co-op in part 1. You're by yourself. You're facing so many obstacles, a lot of puzzles to solve. Wow, it's a shame that the franchise didn't continue. That's one thing that myself and every fan of Dead Space is yearning for, another installment, but an installment that really reflects part 1. Because as we all know, part 3 was more action oriented.
Exactly. And another thing too is when Dead Space 2 came out, even they introduced us to the multiplayer. So now it's creatures versus the the humans, really. But it got to the point where if you all died as humans, the creatures could just literally go to your spawn and just keep killing you and killing you and kill you. Pretty much like a spawn trap.
Right.
So it was horrible. And then they just introduced the regular co-op in Dead Space 3.
That's the sad part of when these big developers, they release video games. Of course, you want to cater to a wide audience, but there's a certain mystique about survival horror that Dead Space 1 brought to the table. And I remember, I have to dig through my box here. I had the issue of Game Informer when Dead Space was in development. They were showing pictures of it, and I was saying to myself, wow, that's what got me interested in the first place. Wow, this is amazing stuff, so much detail. But the thing that really resonated with me was that story. It has a rich story, and you don't normally see that in a video game. Sure, it would have a story and you do your side missions and you learn about the character, but there's so many other levels of Dead Space that it has a lot of social commentary if you really look at it.
Well, not just that, but you gotta also remember the first Dead Space was the first time Isaac did not even say a word. It was all everybody else using the video HUD and whatever, really, but Isaac never said a word. So he literally took those orders and kept shut for almost pretty much the entire game. Unless, of course, you were fighting or whatever. Then you kind of hear him grunting and stuff like, but I mean, that was it. I mean, otherwise, he didn't be like, you know what, dude, I'm not taking this order. You can go do it. Like, no, that wasn't Isaac. It was just more like, okay, I'm not going to say a word because I'm not going to hear the end of it.
There was so many risks involved in Dead Space 1. You didn't have the traditional HUD that would show you your life. It's the back of his outfit. Everything was immersing the player in the environment. Nothing was taken away, making it look like a video game. It made the video game, how the developers created it, was you're actually watching a movie. Like, you're on the set of Alien Part 1. And I think that had to do a huge influence on this game. The sense of isolation, the protagonist against the unknown. And the character not speaking a word at that time, all the characters would speak. Even Duke Nukem with his sarcastic antics was a core of the gameplay. But here is you just controlling this guy. You don't know who he is. Regular average Joe, no muscles, no gun, because what he's using is not a gun. It's a tool.
Well, that depends on what you're using.
That plasma cutter. The plasma cutter is a tool to cut materials. Engineer tool.
Oh, right. But I'm talking the different weapons.
Yeah,
I guess.
Once the integration of combat became invested in Dead Space, then you had the flamethrowers that was actually a gun and not a real flamethrower. And all these other shotguns, unlimited ammo.
Shotgun, line gun, the contact beam, the plasma cutter, and then I'm pretty sure I'm missing one, but I can't think right now. Oh, the what is it called? I think it was in Dead Space.
Right, yes, the Ripper.
Yeah, quite a big collection.
Right. To close out the segment, I think Dead Space, a huge influence, powerful influence on survival horror. And in our next segment, we're going to be discussing the survival horror element as well as the action-oriented elements that were invested in this franchise, and did it lead to its demise?
Dead Space, action elements. Did it kill the franchise?
Message 34. Isaac, I know you're there. Come on, pick up the phone. Fine. Look, I just called to say I'm moving on. I have to. Just take care of yourself, okay?
In this next segment, we're going to be discussing the action element that the developers invested into the Dead Space franchise. Pretty much it is so strong in Dead Space 3, which you would have the co-op. They introduced the soldier character and pretty much, in my opinion, unlimited ammo. In my opinion, I think the action element killed the Dead Space franchise. Action should be reserved for first-person shooters and other type of video games with first-person or whatever the case may be. But for survival horror, there has to be a certain element there. You need the puzzles. You need the instinct to survive. Close to no bullets or no resources whatsoever. And the developers have to make the character have a lower health frame. What I mean by that is no superpowers, no health kits, no nothing. Just survive. So, Paul, what are your initial thoughts on the action elements? Did it kill the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. And then I also have to say, but, you know, for somebody like me who enjoyed going to Dead Space 3 for a minute, well, I really enjoyed playing Isaac's partner in that one game, just because I think I mentioned about it before where, you know, I loved the idea of playing a different character, even though it's like the same game, but now this other person that you have is seeing things that Isaac does not see. And what I mean by that is, like, so there's 3 different, I'll say, side stories, for lack of a better way of putting this, but, you know, his partner had 3 different side stories. And I still remember one particular one where I walked into this room with a friend of mine, and there's the gigantic nutcrackers all throughout the room. And I just remember on the mic on my PS3 telling my friend, dude, do you see this? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you don't see these goddamn nutcrackers that are just staring at me? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, dude, there's a fucking nutcracker right here that is literally following me. How do you not see this? And he's like, so he thinks I'm going crazy in real life because, you know, he can't physically see it on his side of the game. So, you know, that is the type of cool thing that I enjoyed about Dead Space 3 co-op, just because of those little side stories. But otherwise, yes, the action, when Dead Space became action, where we had bullets, we had resources, we had everything up the ass to just survive, that's what killed it.
I enjoyed the new character element, the soldier, and on the graphic novel, there's also, he has his own story, and there's a story with the pirates who tried to board the USG Ishimura. That's action oriented in the graphic novel. In that context, sure, I did enjoy it, but introducing it to the game, the closest thing I could compare that to was the demise of Fear, which was also another successful survival horror that started out survival horror, but in the instance with Fear, it was a perfect blend of action and survival horror. And in my opinion, developers tried to look at that as a model and say, hey, we could do this with Dead Space. It doesn't work because the first installment wasn't like that. It was all fear-based music, environment, creatures, and to shift it dramatically in part 3. And Paul, do you remember that side story with Issac? And he had the love interest, what was that, his girlfriend or something like that? I wasn't quite following. I'm like, what is this? It looked like a soap opera there.
You're talking with the dead wife, right? The Nicole, or are we talking the other one?
The other one.
Yeah. Oh, man. I don't know what.
It was like a soap opera.
Yeah. Like, I'm looking at a screenshot, and you know what the text says? What's that look for? This going to work, right? And it's, you know, it's Isaac and that girl that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, oh my goodness. Which I think that's the only time we actually see her. I think the idea was, I'm assuming it was one of those weird things where it was just like, you know, Isaac is trying to recover from his dead wife, especially from the end of number 2,
right,
and stuff like that. And then so he figured, well, maybe starting a new relationship might help, you know, rebuild and recover, because, you know, now that he has somebody that can look up to him, and he can look up to that person. It's like one of those weird, well, not weird, but it's like one of those ways to recover. But in this case, yes, it was so confusing because it was just like, oh, you're going to work or whatever, and it's just like, whoa, like, what's going on here?
Right.
And so there was definitely some type of tension going on here, and I believe wasn't that character's name like Ellie Langford or something like that? I
don't recall. I would have to play the game again. But a part of me doesn't want to play that game. And talking about Dead Space all this time and doing this special 10-year anniversary podcast about this game, I feel like putting in Dead Space 1 on and playing it again, it would be like playing it for the first time.
You know, what's funny is last year when I was doing some streaming on Twitch for the podcast and stuff, just for one of those cool things to do, I guess. I replayed all through Dead Space. I replayed all through Dead Space 2. And then I started Dead Space 3, and I never went back and finished it.
Yeah, there was something about the third one. It's just the action element, and it's unfortunate that EA is sitting on this property and not doing anything with it. Come on, this is a great franchise to... we always talk about reboots and remakes. Hey, this one deserves to be brought back to life. It has a great story, but once again, if they got to bring it back to life, let's say, don't incorporate action. Put it back to what it was. Just how Capcom is trying to do that with the Resident Evil franchise, which that's a topic for another discussion because that franchise is beyond repair. But Dead Space, yeah, it's just so much of an influence that it deserves to be brought back.
I agree. And to expand on that Resident Evil comment, all I'm going to say is Resident Evil went down the drain when Shinji Mikami left Capcom. That was it. And then otherwise, yes, Dead Space deserves to come back. Even if you at least bring it back to like the new generation consoles or something, or give us some type of cool remaster or something. That way fans can appreciate the game again, and that way it'll give us a more, or to bring in new fans again too, especially for 10 years. I mean, 10 years, and it's, it's just like that one favorite CD. In this case, Dead Space 10 years later is still goddamn awesome to play.
And I can't believe we're saying 10 years.
Exactly.
Time flies. Because it seems like yesterday my wife bought me Dead Space 1 at GameStop. I'm like, wait a second. 10 years flew by. Can't believe that.
And just to throw it out there for those that may not know, but Dead Space 1 came out on my birthday on 2008.
Whoa. That's cool. That's cool.
So that was a birthday gift.
Oh, I could imagine. It took me a while. If it wasn't for my wife, I would never have bought it. But it took me a while. It's one of those things. It's like Star Wars. To close out the segment, it's like Star Wars. I have not seen Star Wars until a couple of years ago. It was one of those things that when it's the right time and you want to savor it, whatever it is, a movie or a game, it happens. And that's what happened with me with Dead Space. I wanted to buy it. I was contemplating on getting it. My wife said, you know what? Here, damn it, you got to get this game and you got to play.
Best decision ever.
Oh, of course. Always. The wives.
They know it too well.
Exactly.
Dead Space, exclusive interview. Actor Gunner Wright.
Isaac, are you there? Come in, Isaac. Oh, God. I'm so sorry, Isaac. Look at the time difference. I'll call you back later.
It's okay. How you doing?
Good. You're right, Isaac. The Ishimura is a great ship. I am so lucky to be serving aboard her.
Enjoy it while it lasts. You know they're going to decommission her next year.
Isaac, thank you.
For what?
For just pushing me to do this. I mean, if it weren't for you, I never would have made it this far, because you made me stick with it.
Ken R2's DecayMag founder here. The following interview features actor Gunner Wright. For those of you familiar with the Dead Space franchise or any of the Dead Space game titles, Gunner Wright provides the voice-over and motion capture for the protagonist, Issac Clarke. This is a two-part interview, this being the second part of the interview. Catch the first part in which we speak with Gunner Wright on his latest film titled The Pinch. That is in our next episode of DecayMag Sessions. For this episode, we delve in Gunner Wright's experience working on Dead Space and the various attributes of the game, voiceover acting, and a slate of other topics. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure as a journalist and also as a fan of the Dead Space video game and the Dead Space universe itself, because Dead Space has books, graphic novels, in addition to film. Once again, it's a great pleasure to introduce my conversational interview with actor Gunner Wright. And now we're delving into the second portion of our interview, which is Dead Space. And I have to say, a little story with Dead Space. I always wanted to get the game. And one time, my wife and I, we were in GameStop, and we see the game on the shelf, and it was at my birthday. She said, you know what? You're always talking about this game. I'm going to get it for you. And since that time, I've been hooked. I have the books, the graphic novels, all the games. I was officially hooked. A little tidbit story behind how I got involved in Dead Space.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it, man. You know, it's just such a wonderful thing to be a part of, because it's such a great talking about story. It really is. If you really look at the broad picture of what they did, it's the story is incredible. It's a story that, let's just be honest, a lot of storytellers have picked apart and taken some of the, whether it's visuals or just, parts of the story and utilize. You see it in films, in some video games to this day. But yeah, I get hit up all over the world from fans, a lot of young people who are now discovering the game series for their first time, sending me a message, asking for an autograph, or the coolest thing is you get these fans from around the world that will send their video game covers. And I can't tell you how many times I'll get a package. It's from somewhere in Europe, or the last one I got was, I think the kid was like 15, and clearly wow. he had sent me his game cover and wrote a letter, but it looked like his mom had written it because of the handwriting, and it had like a $20 bill. They had a $20 bill rolled up for return postage, and I'm like, I'm not taking this kid's 20. This is crazy. So you autograph it, you send them a thank you so much. You put the 20 back in the package, and you send it off, and that's when right. And I'm sure on a larger scale, the Harrison Fords and the guys that have just been a part of massive franchises. You live with it, so there's probably good and bad, but at the end of the day, the good far outweighs the bad. And I got a little taste of that as playing Issac Clarke.
Oh wow, that's hilarious, and yeah, of course it comes with the territory. But Dead Space reached its 10-year anniversary, and one example you point out with the fan mail. Looking back on this survival horror video game, what were some personal highlights for you as a professional, as an actor, working on this project?
Probably what makes most projects that are successful, probably what makes them kind of stand the test of time, and that's just the magic of the unknown. Especially going into Dead Space 2, which was the first time that the protagonist, that Issac Clarke, spoke. There were so many what ifs, so many unknowns, so many uncertainties. And for an actor, I didn't know really what I was auditioning for, to be honest with you. I had not played the original Dead Space video game, so I went in. This is the truth. I went in, and they were, rightfully so, they were very secretive about what this project was and really who Issac Clarke was. Right. I remember, I think it was a very small scene that I went into the initial audition, and there wasn't a lot of context based off of now what we know. So, to be honest, I can't remember if it was even going to be motion capture or video game, or if I thought it was a film. That's how elusive it was. So I went in as an actor, going to do his audition, and you get the call back. And once I booked it, I didn't understand the scope of really what it was until I knew, okay, I'm going to be playing this lead character in this video game series. Right. It is going to be motion capture, which at that time I had never done motion capture before. Okay. I went to EA and met with a lot of the executive team. And I think even after I booked it and it's like, okay, we're going to be working on this, I don't think we started really shooting or did the table read for 8 to 9 months. It was such a long, arduous process. And yeah, so going back to just the excitement that we're talking about now, it was just the magic of not knowing what to expect. So there was no dollar attached. I'm sure from an executive standpoint, there were, targets that they wanted to hit. Right. But we were all just trying to do the best that we could. Everyone was just throwing in their creative hats and just focused on doing exactly what we can to make this the coolest project that we can make. Right. And I really feel like with Dead Space 2, we knocked it out of the park for having to move the story along, giving Issac Clarke a voice, still keeping a lot of the fan base that were lovers of the first game, keeping them excited about it. And I feel like that's really where we kind of hit that mark. And going back to what we discussed earlier with your portraits of a regular guy, Issac Clarke is a regular guy, non-superhero type. And to see the evolution from part 1, where he's a silent guy, in part 2, we finally hear him speak. So how was that finally giving a voice to this character? As an actor, did this also broaden your skills in bringing this character to life? Absolutely. It was as scary as you could think. I mean, here I am, there's already fans that are loving this character, this silent hero, anti-hero, ordinary guy thrusted into crazy situations in space. And yet this second game, this segment as a story, this kind of sequel to this story campaign, they're going to hear my voice, and my emotions coming through this character. So you better believe and that was probably part of it. That was the best part of the beginnings of it. Was just, I'm trying to, as we're talking, you'll crack up because I actually have the original paperwork and visuals in front of me of what EA gave me about the Dead Space universe and kind of all the different breakdowns. I was just looking because a few things changed, but for the most part, basically Issac Clarke, an everyman thrusted into extreme circumstances, and they had references early on of like Bruce Willis and Die Hard to just different characters that were not necessarily, they were unassuming. Right. They didn't get out of a muscle car and they had a tank top on, jacked with huge muscles and sunglasses and a shotgun ready to save the day. So, right. They really wanted me to hone in on that aspect of the character early on, which in some ways made it easy because that I connected to, I connected to that everyman and, what would I do in those situations? And a lot of times that just naturally, organically worked right along with the story. And going back to also, we discussed character arcs. Issac Clarke is, as a writer, from my point of view, one of the attractive aspects of this video game, of course, is the visuals, but as a writer is the character arc. And we have a character that evolves not only from Act 1 to Act 3 as a normal film would, but over the course of this franchise, we see him as a silent guy
doesn't know what's going on, going about his day, a heartbroken man, into part 3, which you also portray, and he's just a totally different entity. From this character, what really stands about you portraying these characters in this franchise?
Well, I looked at it like this. I had been a gamer, but not in the sense of ever as an actor being in a game before, and it wasn't like it wasn't like I was going to GameStop all the time and checking out the latest and the newest. So I had, in some weird way, I had a very fresh perspective of being an actor who didn't have a lot of stake in the gaming world as a talent, and
right.
2, I didn't come into the franchise as, oh, I know this game, I know what the fans are digging, and what they're going to gravitate towards. What was wonderful about the project to me was it was very cinematic, and that's what I gravitated towards. I looked at, and I still do, I looked at the Dead Space franchise like a film franchise.
Yes.
Yes. And I thought the writing was wonderful, and I could understand that arc, and they took their time. And I really believe that a lot of what you see came from that cinematic perspective. Yes, there's going to be gameplay. Yes, you've got to kind of help nod and encourage the game player along, but yet you are telling this story. And that's something that I took to heart. Was, okay, in my mind, we're shooting a movie. It's just going to happen to be it's going to live in a genre where someone's actually going to be participating and playing alongside Isaac as Isaac. But I looked at it literally like we're shooting a science fiction horror film franchise, and it helped. That helped me not just ground myself as a character, but keep the importance of the task at hand without losing the, because if in my opinion, especially back then, if I looked at it like, oh, I'm just acting in a game,
right?
You could rely on the fact that the gameplay, as long as the gameplay is good enough, it doesn't matter what we do,
right?
And not that that's what other game makers sometimes kind of lean towards, but that's the farthest that I wanted to even think about something like that. Like, oh yeah, we can just phone in all this hacking stuff over here because the game's going to be so cool that the player is just going to want to play, and he's not going to want to. He doesn't care what this, what's happening over here. And that was a real godsend because, like I said, I didn't see it. It was almost like, hey, whatever you guys do with gameplay, that's great. I want to focus on the story.
Right.
And we were really able to do that. And I think that that's what shows with the franchise.
Right. Well, I, for one, sometimes it annoys my wife when I'm playing a survival horror game because I listen, I watch, I pay attention to every cinematic scene. I just don't press the button to go into the gameplay. My wife goes, hey, just play the game. No, there's so much intricacies, and it's what you just elaborated on. I want to listen to the actor. I want to see how he's conveying this role. I want to hear the dialogue. I want to see the cinematics. That's all part of the experience, in my opinion.
100%. And what's so crazy is that was something that was within a genre. Okay, so gaming, you've got this percentage, like, well, how much of this thing, this game, is it participation, meaning that the gamer's actually going to control, and how much of it is the story that basically the company not forces you but encourages you to take a back seat and just be a viewer, right?
Right.
And so that was this thing. There was this percentage of hands-on gaming versus sitting back and just viewing the storyline. And what's crazy is it's just part of technology. It's going to continue to blur to where, there's already talk of certain types of cinematic experiences where they're creating alternate endings or versions of it, and the viewer can kind of go through different paths of what they think the protagonist or antagonist would do. And with VR and a lot of these new ways to create these experiences, what was something that just lived in the gaming world is slowly coming into just the regular audience viewing world. And that to me is exciting because, you at the end of the day, you're telling a story, but you are in some ways encouraging the viewer to be more vested in the outcome. And I believe that with Dead Space and that franchise, we did a wonderful job of that balance between gameplay and, hey, you know what? If you just want to sit back and just take part in the story, you can do that too. And they invested a lot with some of the animation, the movies that would kind of tie in different parts of the storyline, the books that they put out. I mean, they did a lot of extra work to give that fan that really wants to invest into the story. They gave them a lot, and I think that helped fuel the excitement for the next game that came after Dead Space 2.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I opened up our segment. I played the game, sure, but it didn't stop there. I have seen the movie, I have the books, I have the graphic novel. I think, in my opinion, this is one of the immersive stories, not video game, but stories, because it just transcends across different aspects of what we are living in society, which could be the strongest reason, of course, is the aspect of religion and fanaticism of religious context. And that's so prevalent in Dead Space universe.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I always looked at it like we were shooting a movie, to where to this day, I would love to see some version of Dead Space created in the cinematic universe. And that's the coolest thing about what's happening now with streaming and just different types of outlets, is that if there was a Dead Space 4 video game that was created, wonderful. Right. But if it was relaunched as something that was a streaming platform or a standalone movie that kind of kicks off, a whole new way of viewing the franchise, that would be great too. And just to continue to be a part of that, if it was Issac Clarke, that would be incredible. That would be amazing to be able to do that in that way.
And you just touched on my next question. I know you've been asked that many times. Thank you for answering that part of the question, of the interview question.
Well, listen, there's a lot of fans out there that don't want to see it go away.
Right.
There's a lot of there's a huge appetite out there for the fans that want to see the franchise carry on in some form. Right. And only time will tell. The beautiful thing is it's EA's property. That's another thing too. It's like, that's how incredible was that? It wasn't like they took some existing property, bought the rights. This is something that their team created from scratch, which is incredible. So it's their IP. They've got it, and it's up to them on how they see fit of where they want it to go. And to be honest with you, I think it's been great to not rush that.
Right.
With the more we wait, let's just say the more you wait, the more technology changes, the more opportunities exist for it to exist in some fashion or form. And if not, it was such a fun project to be a part of. So many great, talented people that I got a chance to work with, and what a wonderful character to play.
Absolutely. That leads on to the next question. Of course, Dead Space reached its 10-year anniversary, and working on a franchise for a video game, I'm assuming it has the same connection as working on a franchise in film. So once the project stopped, was there like a void with you as an actor and this connection with this character? Like, okay, what's going to happen now?
100%. I'd say that it's different because of probably the way that it's shot. There's with a video game as an example. You let's say you and I we're gonna do 1 week or 2 weeks of motion capture, because motion capture is so expensive,
right?
Especially back then. So for the producers, it was really difficult because reshoots in film, not that they're cheap, but they're kind of a necessary evil in a lot of ways.
Right.
For a lot of different reasons. But with video game expense, you don't want to go back for kind of a human error, right? It's just so expensive to do. So we would they would budget in rehearsals, they would budget in motion capture, but it was not locked. But for the most part, what you were going to be doing is what you're going to be doing. So there was so much prep to lead up to those moments, to where you would knock out your scenes throughout the week or 2 weeks of motion capture. And then you would do some version of an ADR or voiceover that you could do after the fact if you needed to clean up something. But, you would do these short spurts of production, and then they're in post for months and months at a time. So it was a different way that you would film something like that compared to a Marvel movie or something like that.
Right.
And yet probably the feeling absolutely is the same. You're as someone who's carrying a franchise, it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to experience that, because you know what that feels like. It's like there's a huge team that makes something like a franchise successful, and yet at the end of the day, if I go and guest star on a TV show, I'm exposition. I'm someone who's coming in and kind of helping move the story along, but I have very little vested interest, because I'm connecting dots, and then I'm on a plane heading back to LA. If I'm a series regular on that show, if I'm the lead cop or whatever, it's
right.
like, I'm driving, me and the other lead actors are driving that show or that content season after season or film after film. And there's a different type of pressure and a weightedness to that. And I was blessed, because even though it wasn't, let's say, a Marvel or a DC Universe mega project, listen, these video games were, some of the budgets were pretty close.
Oh yeah.
And yet, I was the star protagonist. And so I felt that. I definitely felt that every time I went to work, not that it was a quarterback mindset, but that, look, you know what, this is it's a big responsibility. There's a lot of money riding on it. A lot of wonderful people are putting in, their best effort, and I've got to do the same, 100%. So yeah, you felt that. You definitely felt that pressure going to work. But also, here we are 10 years later, and I just had a fan from the Ukraine through my fan email, send me an email. This kid just discovered Dead Space for the first time. So, I mean, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of something like this, 10 years later.
Right. Yeah. You have, you never know when you jump into a role how much of an impact that character would be, and have the success behind Dead Space. And I agree with you. I hope that they do a motion picture or a next installment. But when you have that impact on a wide community, because video game community is so wide across the globe, it just, you feel immortalized in a way.
Hey, look, I got it on a personal level. I cannot tell you. I mean, it's just, you get an email from a soldier who's come back from Afghanistan or Iraq, and they're going through some serious, not just health issues, but all the personal issues that I can't even imagine.
Right.
One comes through, and they send you this email thanking you for, your character helped inspire them to fight on,
Right.
There's just been, there's been so many of those that it goes way beyond, I got paid to do this thing, or yeah, we did this really cool project. It's like when you get those types of thank you fan mail.
Right.
I was going through a dark time, and by playing Issac Clarke, it kind of helped me to fight on. I can tell you so many scenarios that, I still keep in touch with a handful of the producers from the Dead Space, and I'll send them, hey, look at this one. Someone will send me, hey, we got this one in, and that's when it transcends from something personal, like, oh yeah, I did this really cool project and I got paid this great amount to do this cool thing, to, hey man, I really helped someone through this franchise, make their day better.
Right.
If that makes any sense. I know I'm kind of rambling, but that's something that I didn't expect, because there's no manual for that. There's no acting class of, hey, if you're ever part of a successful any franchise, you might get these things that happen to you along the way.
Right.
What a responsibility! I mean, to get to get a military person, a veteran, multiple, as an example, to send a message of thanks for being able to, find some internal strength by playing Issac Clarke. I mean, how do you put a price tag on that, or
right.
How do you quantify that? It's just such a wonderful feeling, and a humility of and a responsibility. I think that's
right.
the thing too. That's a responsibility of being a part of a powerful thing like a major franchise that I don't know how I would have handled it 20 years ago if I would have gotten it. And God bless the ones that are coming into the business that are now part of a huge franchise and feel that weight, indirectly feel that responsibility, because it's like I said, it's something that you don't, there's no one helping you deal with that. If it happens, you just deal with, it just comes in.
Right.
So you need to have that maturity and that understanding that, and that's the thing about viewers, you can be a filmmaker and you can create this wonderful ending, but you're going to get a fan who's going to interpret it possibly a different way.
Right. That's true. That is true.
And a lot of directors will say, hey, you know what? Who am I to say that they're wrong?
Right.
So that's a whole nother story.
Well, personally, thank you for really keeping in touch and really being with the community. Some actors and actors, they don't be with the community, and it just boggles my mind, because without the community, without the fans, they wouldn't be in that, he or she wouldn't be in that position. So many thanks to you. All the best. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you for your time.
Oh, it was wonderful to talk to you, Ken, and I wish the community out there a wonderful 2019, and thanks for having me on your show.
Dead Space, the animated films.
Whatever it is, it's just up ahead.
My God, we found it.
We've got to call this in.
Earth, you should have an image. What? Down here! You're killing everyone! Oh my God! Oh my God! In a remote edge of the galaxy, a massive mining operation is underway.
This is Aegis Colony. Artifact discovered.
Dead Space spawned a slate of content, not only just the video game release, we have a lot of other content, but let's specifically delve into the two films, Downfall and Aftermath, which in its own right, it ties into the story. It's chronological, and it's its own little thing. It doesn't have Issac in it. It doesn't have anything else to do with part 2 or 3 character-wise. Different characters, same scenario. Paul, share your opinions on these two fantastic films that tie into Dead Space.
No, I completely agree. The only thing that I find really funny about how they did this is that when they released the first Dead Space, which I said was on my birthday on October 13th, 2008, then you got, let's see, that would be almost 2 weeks and a day that they released the first film, which is Dead Space Downfall. So initially, for those people that probably beat the game within those 15 days, right, they probably saw that, oh, look, Dead Space put out a movie. What is this? And then you find out this is the beginning before the event of the first game. So now you're actually watching this animation movie of the actual event that went on, that went into the Isaac, crashing into the ship and stuff where his wife is and stuff like that. But I just find that so funny because I can only imagine those people that were like, man, now that I watched this Dead Space Downfall, now I want to go back and replay the game because now this makes so much sense.
Downfall was amazing. It is what anime should be: gory, action, and sometimes you know what's gonna happen to the characters. There's characters you want to follow the characters, but they were so disposable in this animated movie. What was more important was the story itself. Okay, how did this virus get on board Ishimura? And the captain played a huge role with bad decisions. But we all know what's going to happen to everybody on board the ship.
Oh, yeah. Well, now that you just mentioned that, that's actually a good point that you said that, because if you remember back in the first Dead Space, when we see the video with the doctor and stuff where the guy is trying to do something with this needle, and then all of a sudden the video cuts out and comes back in and you see that now the guy that was being held now has that needle through his eyeball, and then of course they're blaming the guy now who was just holding it. So with this movie, though, Downfall, it actually showed you what actually happened. It showed you that footage that the game, quote unquote, cut out.
Right.
So now you actually know why this guy is getting blamed for it. When really, it was kind of stupid because, if I remember right, it was like he head-butted the needle, which made the needle go through the guy's eyeball.
Right.
Like that.
Right. Well, but with Downfall also, which I had emphasized earlier with the storyline and the character arc overall throughout the whole Dead Space game, but for Downfall in particular, we see a glimpse of the fanaticism to religion that we could parallel that today with everyone going crazy or blowing themselves up in the name of the God they believed in, or someone walking into a church and shooting the church up in the name of the God they believe in. It's the same thing what these unitologists are doing, accepting their fate, sacrificing their body to these creatures in the name of this relic that they stumbled upon. It's quite fun, and it's scary in a way because it paralyzes life so much.
Yeah, the marker they call it.
Interesting, and how the government tries to hide it. They want to examine it. Same thing with our scenario. How the government wants to examine and probe everything, and the secrecies behind secret projects. This is what happens. Ishimura is a prime example of not messing with things we're not supposed to be messing with.
It's a prime example of what not to do.
Exactly. And we've seen movies that the crew, the captain makes terrible decisions, and we say to ourselves, really? Why did you make that decision? But when you watch Downfall, it's not that. It's everybody's panicked, and you can see the panic. Even if it's animated, there is so much panic that it could justify these bad decisions.
And oh yeah, bad decisions. All right, we'll just say that. But I mean, I shouldn't be laughing about it anyway, because the entire crew was, they were just doing their orders.
Downfall happens before Dead Space 1. Now we have Dead Space Aftermath that happens after Part 2.
Yeah, it is after Part 2, isn't it? Yeah.
It happens 3 weeks after.
Yeah.
And that's... Okay. For those who haven't seen Aftermath, I watched it and I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, it's just different.
I don't know why the film was made as it was made. 3 different animation styles. I could see what they were going. It's an anthology. That's what it is. But some of the animations were
hilarious,
primitive.
I honestly don't really remember Aftermath, so that's why I'm like, like I just know it. It's Earth. Like it involves another ship that Earth sent out to go to investigate because of the contact of the Isonorma was lost again or something like that. Because if anybody really remembers, you got to remember Isaac did go back into the original ship to do something. He would either to start it back up somehow, or he was trying to destroy it or something like that. And even there was even incredible again to re-experience that, to go back into that ship just to remember all those memories that kind of did happen during the game.
Right.
Where we see the necromorph past kind of jump out at us to try to scare us. It was like that echo that was left within the ship from the first game. So I always thought that was cool.
Yes. And there has to... Wow. Isaac... I could only describe that as brave or dumb to go back to the ship after the... right. After the nightmare that he went through, to go back to that again. But once again, if they're referencing Alien, the character, she goes back to fight these creatures multiple times, knowing the dangers involved. And of course, that franchise kind of went down with the action sequence, but that's a different topic. Anyway, if they're referencing Alien, it makes sense that, okay, this character went through shit, knows more about these creatures than anyone because he went through it. Hey, he's gonna go back and try to save or solve the problem again.
Exactly. And then this time, it just involved a different antagonist, really, or antagonist. Yeah, there we go. And it's that thing again where it's just it goes back to really anything is, who do you trust?
Exactly.
You gotta trust yourself, really, even though you might be on the path to destruction, but it's just one of that hard choices of, do you even trust yourself, really, because of what's going on.
Absolutely. And with Dead Space Aftermath, I question the quality of the animation. It looks primitive, but it ties in with what you have just said, Paul, and that is, who do you trust? Because all the characters in that film go through some shit, some deep shit, but it's not with the necromorphs, it's with the humans. The humans are backstabbing everybody. Like, what the... Who? There's no escape, really. Do you die at the hands of the government trying to shush up, quiet down the situation? Or do you die at the hands of the necromorph? What death is much worse?
Man, at this rate, I might as well just sack myself to the marker guard, I guess, as they keep calling it always. So, yeah. I think that would be the best way out.
Exactly.
Dead Space, closing thoughts.
bastard! Was this your great plan? Dump me off and die?
It's all about ideas, remember?
Yeah, well, here's another one. I'm crashing through the roof to get you. Now move your ass.
Wait, no, Ellie, it's too late. So clear of the station.
Yeah, well, you don't really have a say this time.
And for our final segment, Paul, closing thoughts on Dead Space overall. Let's kick it off. What was the most influential thing for you for this video game? And do you want to see this video game released as a movie somehow or in the future, or another installment, part 4?
I think I would love to have a part 4 game-wise, but if it has to come down to a movie, I will at least accept that. And I only want a part 4 is because of the way they ended the DLC back on Dead Space 3, if anybody remembers that DLC. It's with the moon people. We got introduced with these moon people that somehow were able to, it was almost like appear in our ship. And that was scary because you don't know if you wanted to go up to these guys or not, because we don't know if they're going to kill us or what was going on. But they kept talking about the moon is coming, the moon is rising. Like, it was something involving the moon. So I would at least love to see what these moon people are capable of. Otherwise, yes, Dead Space is always going to be one of those great survival horror franchises or series, really, depending on how you want to look at it, just because we got movies that connect the game, that answer those type of questions, and we got books, that help fill in the blanks too. Like a good book is Dead Space Martyrs. Like, look at that book.
Yes.
And then we get like The Art of Dead Space book by Titan Books. And it's just incredible of how fast something like that grew, especially for EA. And we all know EA is mainly a sports type of place. But bringing out this survival horror game to turn the tides at the time, I definitely hope they bring back Dead Space to life.
Yeah, I agree. EA Visceral Games, when they were behind Dead Space 1, I believe Visceral was behind Dead Space 2. I could be wrong, but yeah, if they make part 4, they should stick. Now that we have other examples of survival horror games that have emulated some of the aspects of Dead Space, and in my interview with Gunner Wright, he makes a good point. Most of the cinema that we see out now, most of the video games we see out now, borrow from the Dead Space. It could be the ambience, it could be the music, it could be the tension. Right now we have The Evil Within. We have a good story, we have a good character arc, we have the tension. Sure, you have a little bit of action elements, but if you mirror Dead Space and this, is practically the same thing. Tension-wise, that's what I'm referring to.
Evil Within was directed by Shinji Mikami, which is the godfather of horror, survival horror, as people call him.
Yeah.
Because he was also creator of Resident Evil.
Right.
And even though we all know Resident Evil 4 was his last game with Capcom before he went and did his own studio, which was Tango Gameworks, I believe. He wanted to make something else. And when he noticed that survival horror was dying, that is why he decided to come back to direct The Evil Within, to bring back the true fear and the true meaning of the survival horror genre.
Right. Nothing beats playing a survival horror game, turning off the lights, putting the headphones on, and just immerse yourself.
And cranking up the volume.
Exactly. And that's how I played Dead Space Part 1. In that scenario, in a dark room. And I can't count, I'll confess, but I can't count how many times I screamed like a schoolgirl when these creatures would come out. but they won't attack you. It's just that building the tension. You hear the music, and then boom, the creature pops up in the vent somewhere, but it's not attacking you. So you're on guard, like, okay, there's a creature around, and when you lower your guard, boom, that's when the creature comes. That's fantastic, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of those, like, oh, hey, hello, just don't mind me. I'm just walking through here real quick. I just want to jump into this vent. Here we go.
And Dead Space was a franchise that was thinking outside the box. Creature-wise, the antagonist, the protagonist. One thing that really pushed the envelope were the babies, in my opinion. Not many video games will portray babies and then you have to kill them, or toddlers, and you have to kill, because we think of babies and toddlers as innocent creatures, and now we see them as these grotesque creatures that we have to stomp on and shoot at them. That's pushing the envelope as well.
That goes to another thing that we can quickly just say real quick in this closing segment, is that a lot of things nowadays, whether it be in games or movies, they're not pushing it.
Right.
They are only doing so much to the point where it's just satisfying, family friendly, but they're not pushing it to become that true fear.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the case because movie houses are now focused on PG-13 to cater to a wide audience. But for video games, we're seeing a new trend now with survival horror, and EA should just create another installment for Dead Space. I particularly would not like to see a movie adaptation, only because the track record for video game to film adaptation is not so good.
I wish we could at least get our answers one way or another.
All we can do is wait, hopefully sometime in the future, like you had mentioned, a remastered edition of Dead Space. But to my surprise, a lot of younger gamers are picking up Dead Space, probably because they want to experience what survival horror is, and picking up Dead Space is a good example of that.
Exactly.
Dead Space in general, overall, what can you say about this?
Brought back to the light.
Exactly, yeah. I think we both concur on that. And celebrating its 10-year, I gotta emphasize again, 10
Can I just say I just feel old now?
10 years! I can't believe it. Wow. Can't believe it.
Oh, man.
Can't believe it. It's amazing. It's amazing how the years go by, and wow. The character, love it. Great character arc. And the actor Gunner Wright, forever embedded in history as portraying an iconic hero, but a normal hero, because he doesn't have big muscles. He doesn't have that much attributes that you would associate with the hero in an action film. He's just a regular average guy put in a bad situation.
And just for my final thoughts too, this is pretty much the way I look at it. Dead Space was the true meaning of a survival horror game. It was the meaning why you would go down a corridor or go looking through the next corner with your gun already up facing the next corner. Like, okay, I don't know what I'm expecting behind this corner. I'm going to bring up my weapon. And then with Dead Space 2, it has some horror aspects, but it fails because it starts to give us action. And then with 3, it was nothing but action and less horror.
Right. And sad to say, Dead Space became another casualty. I referenced Fear. That was another casualty. And of course, the notorious Resident Evil, another casualty of when you mix action with survival horror, it's not going to have a great result. But hopefully now that survival horror is coming back with the Evil Within and a slate of other survival horror titles that are out now, or coming out soon. I just hope that it just stays that way. Not the developers don't influence it with action. Just keep it how it is. We all love that type of video game play.
Give us new books.
That too. Hey, I love a good read, and all these Dead Space books were intriguing, especially Martyrs, which goes much back into the past before all these events started.
That is where the true horror is in that book.
Isaac? Isaac? Are you there? Carver? Isaac? You're gone, aren't you? The mark signal has gone too. Isaac, you did it! You really did it.
Earth space coordinates confirmed. Shock drive enabled. Standing by.
Ellie?